Thanks, kiddo. So we're mandated by our state legislature to monitor our game species. So my presentation is just going to focus on the best game species in the Trans-Pecos mule deer and pronghorn. So, and we'll start off with mule deer first. So one of the ways that we monitor our mule deer populations is we use helicopter surveys, and we do that post-season, and we do these helicopter surveys within what we call monitoring units. And these monitoring units are based upon mule deer densities and habitat, that kind of stuff. And the monitoring units are broken out by high density, medium density, low density, and very low density. In the very low density areas, we don't survey at all. We just carry that at a constant mule deer per acre density, just for trend information. And so within the high, medium, and low, we generate these randomly transects that are randomly generated, and they're varied in length. So the idea is in the higher density units, we can use shorter transects, and in the lower density units, we need longer transects to get decent sample sizes and coverages within these areas. And usually we fly about 80 transects throughout the Trans-Pecos, and we count and classify mule deer out to 100 yards on both sides of the helicopter, so that if we fly over a group of mule deer, we'll count buck, doe, fawn, and that's the three classifications that we use. And in 2011, we initiated one of our major mule deer research projects based upon sightability. So just because you fly over a big game species doesn't mean that you're going to observe it or count it. So there's several factors that we look at to determine whether or not you were able to see that animal, and it corrects for imperfect detection, basically. That's whether or not the animals were moving, how close they were to the aircraft, brush canopy cover, and terrain. And then in 2019, we established some areas that we utilize to monitor for CWD and how that's impacting populations long term. So in 2005, we initiated those helicopter surveys, and this graph illustrates that from 2005 to now. Our highest populations were in 2005, but since the initiation of the sightability model, 2017 was our highest population estimate, and then in 2024 was our lowest population estimate. There's some things I like to point out on that. This year marks the very first year that we estimated more mule deer in the Texas Panhandle than in the Trans-Pecos. So that's very significant. It's good for the Panhandle, bad for the Trans-Pecos. And then this past year, we made a little bit of gains, but of course, drought drives all desert big game populations. But we also have brush encroachment. We have exploding aoudad elk populations in the Trans-Pecos at this point. We also have increased predation rates, and some of those topics will be discussed by Justin in a few minutes. So here's our trend since 2011. It's declining. It's bad. Here's another way to look at that. So the purple line is our adults, so those are the adult bucks and does. And then the white line are the fawns that are estimated every year since 2011. Our adult population is declining, and however, the fawn production is decent. It's at least stable, maybe a slight decline. Okay, so these are our observations of the deer that we observed during our surveys from 2005 to last year, and it's a heat map. So it just shows you where our observations have been the last 20 some odd years. The redder the color, the more observations that we have. So the red areas is where we have a decent number of mule deer throughout the Trans-Pecos. Okay, here's a slide of our mule deer reproduction. So these are our fawn crop estimates from 2005 to this past winter. You'll see there's a couple of years that we didn't survey. And then also, you'll look at some of those really horrific drought years. We have poor production. But I want to show you the average is 37%. But even at 37%, we still have a population decline. So we need something in this range in the higher 40s to 50s to really increase populations. Okay, mule deer sex ratio. This is another thing that we utilize to determine harvest intensity. So the higher does per buck would indicate higher harvest rates, because we normally don't really harvest mule deer does out in the Trans-Pecos in general. So this is a good tool if you're only harvesting just bucks. So, and this graph really highlights the conservative harvest nature of our Trans-Pecos landowners in most of the area. So an average of 2.4 does per buck is very conservative, very close. And these are postseason. If you compare this to other Western states, not even close. They're like 6 to 8 does per buck. Okay, every year our biologists go out and collect what we like to call dead deer data. We go to processing facilities, and here recently we have utilized a lot of our CWD check stations to collect this data. This is another piece of the puzzle to show that harvest intensity is very conservative. Our average age of buck harvest, or the deer that we check, is 5.4. So again, if you contrasted that with other Western states and whatnot, this would look something like some of their trophy class areas that they manage in, let's just say Arizona or Utah or something like that. Okay, so we collect data on the dead deer, not only age, but we collect some basic antler measurements. So this is data from 1980 to today, and it's like 10 or 15,000 deer. And I want to show you where mule deer really start to peak out at the 6 to 7 year age. At deer in general, they're putting a lot of resources into their body until about 4 years of age. And then after that, then they can put it into their antler development and body weights and stuff. So I got another graph here, just some more basic antler measurements: inside spread, a basal circumference on one antler, and then the main beam on one antler. You could see where it's 5 to 7 years of age but it peaks out at 7. Field dress weights, same trend, peak out at 7. Okay, let's talk about pronghorn, the other really cool big game species. Better than bighorn sheep. Oh, sorry. Okay, so pronghorn. This is how we do our population estimates. We have these areas, what we call herd units, and they're divided up by pronghorn habitat and really perceived barriers to movement, whether that be highways, fences, mountain ranges, that kind of stuff. And different than mule deer, we fly these preseason, and we fly these in a fixed-wing aircraft. And then each herd unit, we space out transects that are equally spaced a half a mile apart. So that basically gives us 50% coverage of a herd unit that we fly. And those green herd units are what we call the core herd units, and those are flown every year. And the yellow herd units are what we call rotational herd units, and those herd units are flown every third year. And then we've got some herd units that we don't ever fly because there's like 2 pronghorn. So there's it doesn't make any sense to spend the time and resources on those herd units. And like mule deer, we count and classify. We do buck, doe, fawn, and we use distance sampling. That's another technique to help address imperfect detection. Like I said, just because you fly over an animal doesn't mean that you're going to count it, right? So this is what our biologists have to go through every summer. I forgot to tell you, we do these in June, July, so it's really freaking hot. You're in an airplane and it's bouncing and it's low and you're going real fast. And so this is what you have to do if you're a Texas Parks and Wildlife biologist. So you need to tell me how many pronghorn there were, whether they're buck, doe, fawn, and which distance band that was in. Got it? Okay, so now you see what they have to go through. They do a lot of hard work, and these surveys are the suckiest big game surveys on the planet. So thank you for all the hard work. Okay, so our Trans-Pecos pronghorn trends since 2017, when we initiated the distance sampling technique, much different than our mule deer trends, which is really cool. They have more of a stable trend, and we have done a lot to keep that population to where it's at least stable in years where it's not so good. Just like mule deer, pronghorn really need good range conditions to make babies and thrive and increase populations. But we have done a lot of habitat work with a lot of our NGO partners, cost share with landowners, brush control, fence replacement modifications. We do a lot of intensive predator management to improve fawn production. And so I would suggest that all of the work that has gone into pronghorn, at least we've cut our losses, right? We're at least maintaining what we got, and we're not losing like what we see in the mule deer. So another way to look at it, just like the mule deer graphs, these are adults and fawns. We do see the adult trends kind of declining, but look at the fawn production is increasing. And it seems like that fawn production has, it's enough to sustain those adult losses. And I'll show you that graph after this one. So this is just a real quick map of our pronghorn numbers throughout each herd unit in the Trans-Pecos. These are from 2025. So the darker the herd unit, the more pronghorn there are. I just wanted to show you where most of our pronghorn are: Hudspeth County, Marathon, and then some of the Marfa Plateau. So Trans-Pecos fawn crops through 2017 to today, that's at 27%. It's not real high, but it's enough. So with all of the habitat work and predator management and all that, we're able to do better with less, I guess. Sex ratios, again, same thing with mule deer. Very conservative. We actually issue the permits to the landowners on what bucks could be harvested. So this next graph is our buck permit issuance and then Trans-Pecos from 2017 to last year. So we have our buck permit issuance, how many buck permits were used, and then the utilization rate. So every year, like I said, we survey these pronghorn populations and we come up with a buck estimate per herd unit. And we're, depending upon what estimate that we use within the herd unit, we'll use 20 to 35% of our estimated buck population to issue these permits, and very conservative utilization of the permits, around 60%. And just the close, this is data from the Panhandle, and it does track with Trans-Pecos pronghorn, but this is some data that has about over 1,000 pronghorn bucks in it. We did cementum annuli aging to get our age classes, and then we did total masses, force circumferences, horn length, and prong length. Much different than deer. 95% of the horn growth on a pronghorn is done by 3 years of age. And that's just another way to look at that. What's the percentage of increase per age class? They do climax at 5 years of age, but by 3 years of age is a quality animal. And so we'll be issuing permits here pretty soon. You should be getting your permits by next week, I would think. And then we also offer this to hunters. So I'll be sending every year for the last 5 or 6 years. I've been sending out these tooth collection packets where we estimate harvested pronghorn buck ages. And so this is another piece of the puzzle that biologists can use to make their harvest recommendations with populations and then buck age structure as well. So with that, got time for questions? Okay, I'm here all day. Thank you.